Welcome to channel. Today, we explore story filled with unexpected twists. Please subscribe and like to stay updated. Let's begin. Emily and I had been married for 5 years when this narrative starts. Our wedding, which had 300 guests, including the bride and groom's families, and cost $150,000 in floral arrangements, is still fresh in my mind. At that point, the officiant asked, "Do you, Emily Grace Waverly, take Liam Andrew Whitman as your lawfully wedded husband, forsaking all others, until death do you part?" I recall her saying yes and looking at me as if her gaze confirmed that we both promised to be faithful to each other. I offered my approval with the same determined expression. I always thought Emily and I were a wonderful fit, with comparable objectives and interests but enough variances to keep us interested. For example, she was always competitive and athletic, while I favored peace and compromise. Although I seem fit, I've never possessed the desire required for true sports achievement. She is extroverted and readily meets new people, while I prefer a limited group of close pals. Emily comes from rich families and obtained a great education at one of the top institutions on the West Coast. She now works as a sales representative for a pharmaceutical firm. Her success is owed in part to both her education and intellect, as well as her physical attractiveness. It seems that pharmaceutical corporations prefer beautiful staff to communicate with physicians and hospitals, maybe to divert them from sales practices. In any event, her physical characteristics, such as her height of 168 centimeters, weight of 55 kilograms, long chestnut hair, and dazzling blue eyes, contribute to her success. She even got the permission to sell things inside her jurisdiction. Emily revealed to me that her profession needs her to travel often away from our penthouse in Summit Heights, Willow Bay, since she is in charge of a specialized drug market. Although I don't always understand it, I don't enjoy how she is often missing 3 evenings a week, occasionally on weekends. I miss her companionship and often spend my nights with friends, bowling, or going to the movies. Unlike her, my profession does not demand travel. I work from home, developing and selling software for energy-efficient systems. I created the product that I sell and oversee equipment manufacture in the Cedarbrook neighborhood. As a consequence, I spend a lot of time at home and know the majority of my neighbors. This is uncommon for Hillside Crest, an elite high-rise, but I volunteered to do the accounting for the condo association. Our condominium has 4 duplex units on each of the 2 levels, as well as 1 single-level apartment on each floor. The duplex residences have an office, 3 bedrooms, a kitchen, a spacious living area, and 3 bathrooms. The single-story homes have a smaller living area, kitchen, bathroom, powder room, 1 bedroom, and a closet. Unit 10B, close to our entrance, 10A, is leased by a lady who seems to be too young to afford an apartment in our premium complex. I would say she is 27. Emily and I are just 29, so I believe many others in the building feel the same way about us, particularly because we own our apartment rather than renting it. The young woman's name is Natalie Reed. Most tenants are not home during the day on weekdays, so they are unaware that Natalie is at home the most of the time and has 2 to 4 visits each day, all of whom are males. Natalie's looks and the flow of male visits led me to believe she was a high-end escort. Despite my assumptions, I didn't mention anything to her the dozen times I saw her at the pool or fitness club during her first year of 10B for 2 reasons. First, although she does not annoy anybody, I am not interested in her career. And second, it is not something to discuss casually. So what about Natalie's appearance? Surprisingly, I only recall seeing her apply cosmetics twice throughout her first year of 10B. She normally wore a modest one-piece swimsuit to the pool, then loose shorts and huge t-shirts to the gym. She wore slacks and a long-sleeved shirt practically every time she went to and from the lobby. In public, she normally wore her long, shining black hair in a bun with thick black spectacles. Although I was certain she had superb eyesight, the lenses seemed to be standard glass. When not speaking with customers, she plainly attempted to conceal her inherent attractiveness, although she was unable to do so fully. Natalie has a near-perfect face, a stunning body, and long legs. She measures approximately 175 centimeters tall and is thin yet athletic. My relationship with Natalie was nice, if not friendly, during the first year. We knew each other's first and last names, always smiled and said hello as we passed by, and had several idle discussions during exercises or in the pool. When we bumped into one other at the Sunrise Natural Market, we had a 5-minute conversation about how to best cook and serve organic veggies. She was a health freak who cared about not just exercise but also nutrition. That all changed one Thursday around 12:30 p.m., when Emily was out of town and was scheduled to return on Friday around 7 p.m. As I was leaving my apartment to make one of my weekly brief journeys to the equipment manufacturing facility, I heard yelling and pounding in Unit 10B. This was odd, particularly considering the flats are so soundproof. I listened at the door and did not like what I heard. It sounded like the mail was striking the lady. I knocked on the door. "Open up," I said. It was silent for a few seconds, but I thought I heard sobbing. Then a strong masculine voice spoke through the door. "We don't need anything. Open the door, or he'll call the cops," I said, still hearing the tears. A big guy opened the door and exclaimed, "It's none of your business. Get away from me and my girl." He was about to add something more, but when I saw Natalie on the floor and what seemed to be blood, I stopped him. On my keychain, I keep an inexpensive self-defense item. I have no idea what it's called, but it's a hard piece of plastic with a straight portion with holes for the fingers, two rounded ends that extend beyond my hand when I hold it, and a stub with an expanded head that fits between two fingers. The ugly man was taller than me, despite the fact that I am 187 centimeters and maybe 15 kilograms heavier. I grabbed the tool with my right hand and whacked him in the mouth with the larger head of the stub. As I approached him, he backed away, and I smacked him again and again. The third time, he fell over Natalie's prone body, smacked his head on the foyer's marble floor, and passed out. I helped Natalie up, guided her to a comfortable chair, and shut the front door. She had a black eye, bloody nose, and scrapes on her arm and leg. She was dressed in a silk robe, and despite my best attempts to concentrate entirely on aiding her, I couldn't help but notice her stunning body. "Are you all right, Natalie?" was my first foolish inquiry. "Can I get you something?" "I'm suffering right now," she mumbled, before taking a big breath and saying, "It'll be okay. Could you please bring me some paper towels for my nose and a cold compress from the freezer?" I swiftly fulfilled the request. While she placed the compress to her eye, I cleaned the blood from her nose. "Who is this?" I inquired, shaking my head at the lying rascal. "An angry customer," she murmured. "We should call the police," I replied, finishing with her nose. "No cops," she promptly replied. Over the following 5 minutes, we kept coming back to the topic of contacting the cops, but it was evident she didn't want to. Without a doubt, she didn't want their attention for what might be considered her vocation. Eventually, I quit up. "I've got an idea. I do not want him to believe he can do it again. Do you trust me to take care of him?" "Yes, as long as it's not in my apartment," she said, cringing, visibly in agony. I hurriedly returned to my place and got a couple of zip ties, a bottle of water, a bottle of whiskey, and, for the first time, apart from the money Emily brought in, a few sleeping pills from her stockpile of legal drugs. When I returned to Natalie's, I flipped the enormous man over and tied his wrists behind his back using zip ties. Then I rolled him onto his back, sprayed cold water on his face, and awakened him up. I raised him up, he was too heavy to carry, removed the keys from his jeans, and walked him downstairs. I instructed him to point out his vehicle, then set him in the driver's seat, locked the doors, and placed the keys under the seat. Then I gave him 2 sleeping tablets and a double dose of alcohol. I helped him consume the tablets with water and continued to speak to him, hoping to persuade him to never return. When the pills began to take effect, I poured more whiskey into his mouth, cut the zip ties, placed them in his pocket, started and locked his vehicle. I immediately phoned 911 to report a drunk driver parked outside our building. I did not wait for the cops to come before returning to Natalie's. Her door remained slightly open, so I knocked and opened it more. "Hi, Natalie. This is Liam. Can I come in and check how you're doing?" "Of course, you can come in," she mumbled. She was now seated on the sofa, wearing a sweatshirt and sweatpants over her silk robe, her head thrown back, one compress on her nose and the other on her eye. "Let me take a look," I replied as I stood next to her. I then gently withdrew her hand and the compress from her eye. It didn't look really terrific. "I think you should let me take you to the emergency room," I stated forcefully. She started to object, but I continued in an even firmer tone, "Natalie, I'm not a doctor, but your eye has to be inspected. I'm bringing you to the ER, and you have no option. Where are your shoes and purse?" She dutifully pointed them out to me. I slipped her shoes on her feet. "Damn, even her legs are amazing," flashed through my mind as I did this, and we went carefully to the elevator. When we arrived at the building's front entrance, I led her away from the parking lot, where cops were shattering the front passenger side window of the guy's vehicle, shutting off the ignition, and hauling the bully out to load him into a van just as the tow truck arrived. On my way to the hospital, I contacted my manufacturing facility to let them know I'd be late. I assisted Natalie in registering at the hospital, validated her health insurance status, and then handed her my business card, which contained my mobile phone number. Call me when you're finished. They'll pick you up and take you home, I said, giving her the card. You've already done too much. You don't, she started, but I stopped her. I gently put the card in her hands. No, just listen. Call me. You may need to stop by to get your medicine. Call me, and it'll arrive in 10 minutes. I don't have any urgent business today. Okay, thank you, she murmured, attempting to grin faintly. I then stroked her on the head before leaving. My mobile phone rang just as I was ending off work at the manufacturing facility. Hey, Liam, this is Natalie, said a rather firm voice on the other end, more so than when I dropped her off. Are you prepared to leave? Well, yes, but I can hail a taxi if you're too busy, she said. I'm not busy, I cheerfully replied. They'll be there in 15 minutes. The traffic is somewhat worse than normal. Just wait in the emergency room, and I will come get you. Okay, thank you, she promptly said. When I brought her up, she had a bandage over her eye and cotton wool in her nose. We went to the drugstore to get her pain medication and ointment, and then I drove her back to her apartment. Can I bring you something to eat for dinner? I replied as she sat on the couch. You don't have to, she said, but I stopped her again. I want to. What about chicken fingers and fresh vegetables? I saw her pause, and then, recalling our conversation in the grocery store, I added with a huge smile, everything is organic. She laughed as much as her condition permitted. Sounds good to me, she murmured softly. Here, so you don't have to knock on the door, just come in, she said, giving me the key from her handbag. I brought food, wine, and a huge bottle of sparkling water and entered her flat at 6 p.m., using the key she provided me. I hadn't looked around her flat before then since I was so worried about her health. The flat was simple but well-designed, with some obviously unique artworks. They weren't Van Gogh paintings, but they were entertaining and well-executed. Natalie was seated at the kitchen table. Her welcome and grin were considerably more pronounced than when I left her 3 hours earlier. While eating, we spoke about nothing in particular. I can't drink wine with the painkillers I'm taking, she stated as I poured her a glass. I stopped pouring. Sorry, I didn't think about that. It's not allowed, but I need a couple of glasses, she smiled, motioning for me to pour more, which I did. You won't take advantage of me if I fall into a trap, will you? She inquired, attempting to grin. I'd be much worse if I did, but I don't want to since I'll have to carry you to your bed, so don't pass out, I said, laughing. They'll try not to do that, she said. When I completed supper and cleaned the table, I saw two objects. She didn't respond much to the mix of painkillers and the glass and a half of wine she had consumed, but she remained relatively rational. She instantly wanted to have a serious chat. You probably think I'm terrible for entertaining men, she added, gazing me in the eyes and drinking her wine. Certainly not. How you earn a living is your business as long as it does not violate my rights, I said truthfully. How long have you known that I operate as an escort? She inquired, this time establishing eye contact with her uncovered eye. About a month after you moved in, I said dispassionately, drinking my wine. You and your wife. What is Emily's name? Have you and Emily discussed this? She asked. Never. Emily doesn't come here very frequently, as you would expect, and we can't speak about it anyhow. I don't gossip, and I definitely wouldn't guess on a decent neighbor's career. After some more conversation, apparently, she was both feeling me out and unloading. She stated, You're the only straight guy I've known since I moved here who hasn't hit on me. Why? Because I take my marriage vows seriously. More than 90% of my clients are married, she said. But I'm not one of them, in case you were wondering. Physically, you are the most attractive lady I've ever seen, but I don't know you well enough to determine if we are compatible. And I have never been interested in a purely physical connection. I need emotional connection to get the personal encounter I want. So if you're upset because I didn't hit on you, don't be. She did not respond to it. She merely gazed at me with her one decent eye for almost 30 seconds. You know, despite the volume of customers and the intimacy of my job, I am lonely. I have hardly no pals. My type of business and hours of work preclude this, at least for the people I would like to interact with, she said. Following that, we had an uncomfortably honest chat regarding her personal life. It finished with me asking Natalie, So, what is your ultimate goal in life? I ultimately want the same thing as you. I want to have a partner and, ultimately, children. I want someone to be my one and only, and for both of us to be devoted to one another. I'm saving enough money to be financially independent by the time I'm 30. Then I'll leave this life and attempt to find the proper person. But my goals are momentarily on hold since I won't be able to work until my eye, nose, and limb scratches heal. And thought flashed into my mind. Tell me how you feel about working for me. I started saying this when she flushed. What? I thought you were different, she replied in a high-pitched voice, her muscles stiff and her face filled with bewilderment. Let me finish, I said, laughing. Then, recognizing that this was not anything to giggle about, I quickly proceeded. I am not looking to employ you for anything improper. I need assistance completing out papers. I'm very behind and keep putting it off. This is something that even a Cyclops can do if they set their minds to. But I can't pay your regular fee. She giggled. Which is $700 an hour, $2,500 for a full night, and $1,000 per day on-site plus expenses, she whispered before catching herself, flushing, and placing her hand over her lips. I did not miss a beat. I can't pay $700 an hour, but I can pay $27 an hour and offer free food every now and then until you're healed. She giggled. On Monday, show me what you want me to do, and I'll let you know. After another 20 minutes of light conversation, she was clearly fatigued, so I grabbed my belongings. She embraced me and said, "Thank you very much," into my ear. I stroked her on the head and then went. Despite the excitement at the end, I had a wonderful evening with a friend. No real personal undertones. I liked her as a person, and I never imagined she may be lonely. On Friday morning, when I was working at my apartment, I had a tap on the door. "Hi, Liam," remarked a cheerful Natalie, dressed in her typical modest attire. "Hello, Natalie. Are you feeling better now?" I asked happily. "It still hurts like hell, but I'm in a better mood," she laughed. "You probably want your key back," I said as I reached for it on the entryway table. "No. Why don't you leave it in case I need to be rescued again and the man does not answer the door?" she remarked with a smile. "I'm here because I hate to ask for more assistance after all you've done, but I badly need to purchase groceries, and the doctor has strictly forbade me from driving with my blindfold and pain meds on. Can you take me somewhere today?" "Of course," I said, smiling warmly. "How about 1 hour? 1:30? Great," she said, clapping her hands. "Just knock on my door when you're ready." Natalie and I had a wonderful time grocery shopping. I believe this was the first time I had ever enjoyed grocery shopping. While I don't despise the activity, I've never really loved it. I had a good time with Natalie, particularly when she joked with the veggies, pretending they were humans. Natalie arrived at my flat the next Monday, just after Emily went for work. I taught her how to fill out all of the various forms that were laying about my office and even in the living room. She was really conscientious, not quick, but it was the first time she had ever filled out paperwork, so correctness was much more essential than speed. We ate lunch together, worked some more, and then I drove her to the pharmacy to obtain something she needed. Thus started my connection with Natalie Reed. I guess I was Natalie's sole male acquaintance since she was 18. Every other male she met desired her, and that was his only reason for speaking with her. Not that I didn't desire her in an intimate way. She was the most beautiful and sensual lady ID ever met, but I was already married. I took my vows seriously, and ID had other gorgeous women as companions before, so I didn't see Natalie as merely an intimate object. Natalie's presence made the evenings and weekends when Emily was away from home less lonely. With Natalie, there was always something to do. Even when she was entirely recovered after about a month and looked as well as she had before meeting that man, we did nearly everything together on those nights when Emily wasn't around. I also urged her to attend condominium association parties and meetings, ensuring that she had a nice time at each one. However, I found that I couldn't take her on excursions with my male friends since they were too busy either attempting to hit on her or drooling to be decent company, so she and I mainly went alone ourselves. She seems to like it. Even when she began working as an escort again, she insisted on assisting me with the paperwork. I quickly saw that she had more intellectual curiosity and intelligence than she had been given credit for much of her life, so I encouraged her and began educating her about my company. When I attempted to pay her for her assistance, she constantly imposed some conditions, such as a swim in the pool or how much time we could spend studying in the fitness center for double payment or nothing. Most of the time, I ended up paying nothing, which made her happier than when I paid her twice as much. Natalie was one of the most honest and lovely persons I'd ever met. She spent around 10 hours attempting to locate the owner of a little purse with no ID, but about $150 in cash that had been dropped in the swimming pool. She ultimately succeeded. She told me of a customer who experienced health difficulties during an encounter, and she brought him to the hospital and returned his money, despite his demands that she retain it. She grieved because she was unable to rescue a little bird that had fallen into the glass in our building's lobby. She recovered a missing dog and returned it to its rightful owner, rejecting a reward. She tipped the paper boy well, never gossiped or said anything negative about anybody, and never behaved rudely or meanly, even when guys approached her. Natalie shocked me around 7 or 8 months after we were best friends by presenting me an application to the local community college. "I want to get an associate's degree in business administration," she said with a big smile on her face. "Can you occasionally assist me with my homework?" "Of course I can," I said. "I'm so proud of you." She was overjoyed with this reply and went up to me, hugging me firmly. Every time she did this, I had to keep my crotch away from hers, but this time she embraced me so long and firmly that I believe she was aware of my erection. However, none of us paid attention to it. I was pleasantly delighted when Emily learnt more about my connection with Natalie and did not grow envious. I believe this was due to a number of circumstances. First and foremost, Natalie and I never expressed our devotion in public. In private, we never exchanged more than a chaste kiss on the cheek. The second reason was that we created an excellent cover narrative about Natalie's occupation. Third, Natalie started assisting Emily with paperwork, for which she was really appreciative. Fourth, I persuaded a long-standing homosexual friend of mine, who wasn't open but I knew he was gay since high school, to be Natalie's boyfriend at a condo association party and even go on occasional double dates with Emily and me. Obviously, there must be an issue. Life is never as easy as it has been for me in the last 2 years. Emily had to hurry out of town for work on Saturday morning following a phone call, and she was considerably more preoccupied than normal as she departed. She took a tangled bundle of paperwork from her briefcase, laid them on the coffee table, and asked me if she could have Natalie arrange them into folders. I said certainly. Emily's fast departure saddened me since we were planned to go apple picking that day, which only occurs once a year, and I really loved it. Shortly after Emily went, I texted Natalie, "Emily left on the bus. Will you be picking apples this afternoon?" She instantly responded, "Let's go at 11 or any time after 2, okay?" A delighted face showed on the screen. We had a lovely day gathering apples and enjoying apple cider donuts, despite the fact that numerous college males strained to see under Natalie's shorts while she stood on the ladder and looked at her in the donut shop. That evening, we had supper together in my apartment and planned to watch a DVD afterwards. But before I inserted the disc into the machine, Natalie inquired, "What is this?" I reached for the disorganized mound of documents Emily had left on the coffee table. "Oh, these are the papers that Emily dropped off in a hurry and asked if you could process them before she returned on Thursday evening," I said with a smile. "Of course," she said, attempting to assemble the papers so she could pick them up. While she was doing this, something dropped from the stack to the floor. I was engaged loading a DVD when I saw something had dropped. I had no idea anything was wrong until I turned and glanced at Natalie's face. She was clutching what seemed to be a picture and had a devastated expression on her face. "What is this, Natalie?" Nothing," she hastily said, returning the picture to the middle of the stack. Natalie would never be a professional poker player. Her expression plainly indicated that this was not nothing. I approached her. "Let me see what you were looking at." "No, it's nothing," she said, attempting to gently exit the room with a stack of different documents in her hands. This made me even more inquisitive. I gently grasped her hand. "No, I really want to watch this. What is the major secret?" When I released her from the burden, she slumped into the couch, burying her face in her hands. About halfway down the stack, there were 3 6x9 images of Emily nude and with various guys. I sunk to the living room carpet. 2 images and the remainder of the pile of papers tumbled to the floor, and I sat startled, holding the third photograph. "I'm really, really sorry," Natalie replied, placing her hand on my shoulder. I stared at her, shocked. "Maybe these are old photos from before you got married," she said, hoping to discover something nice. "She only got a butterfly tattoo on her left shoulder 2 years ago," I said in answer. After a lengthy gap in which Natalie inquired if there was anything she could do, I eventually answered, "Natalie, I need some time alone to understand everything. Even though you are my best friend, I don't want to speak to anybody right now, please." I'm sure tears welled up in my eyes. I know Natalie cried as she embraced me immediately before she departed. After sobbing for half an hour, I smacked myself in the mirror and yelled, "Action, not pity, you weakling." I went about the house like a whirling whirlwind, rummaging through Emily's dresser drawers, the boxes she kept on closet shelves in various rooms, and her office files. One of her desk drawers was locked, so I unlocked it. I discovered at least a dozen damning and horrifying pieces of evidence. The issue wasn't whether Emily cheated on me, but how long and with how many men. I went through many phases of rage, shame, aggravation, and astonishment. The one recurring thread was, how could I be so damn naive? I did not sleep that night. On Monday, I looked and felt terrible. I didn't get any work done, and I had even less success choosing what to do with Emily. Around 2 p.m., I heard a knock on the door. Natalie was carrying a pitcher of margaritas, which surprised me since ID never had more than one in my life and had never seen her drink more than one. Natalie stormed into my flat. "Listen, stud," she murmured, placing the pitcher on the coffee table. "I have canceled my meeting for today. I phoned your production helpers and informed them that you would not be working this afternoon. We're going to become really intoxicated. Tomorrow, you'll decide what to do with your little bride." I began to complain, but it was ineffective. Throwing all of Emily's papers that had fallen on the floor the night before, except for 3 photographs, at our fake fireplace, I took a drink from the glass Natalie was holding out to me. God, it burned. Natalie was determined to get me not just intoxicated, but also joyful. She eventually succeeded after an hour of entertaining anecdotes and 6 drinks, possibly more. I lost track. I passed out before it became dark outside. For the first time since I graduated from college 8 years ago, I was laying on the floor next to the couch, while Natalie was resting on the sofa with one of her arms falling down and touching me. After some while, I started hearing ringing in my ears. After the 3rd time it stopped and restarted, I realized it was a landline phone. I lurched toward it and had enough insight to check the caller ID. It was Emily's cell phone. I removed the telephone plug from the wall, returned to the couch, pushed Natalie over, and fell asleep curled up with her. Natalie and I woke up together in the middle of the night. I believe it was about 4 a.m. Her first remark, delivered with a sly smirk, was just astounding. "You're the first guy I slept with who didn't try to murder me." I began following the program. "When you look at yourself in the mirror, you will understand why, Brumhilda," I whispered. "You aren't a prize yourself." "To be honest, I'm not sure whether I'm speaking to your face or your 5th place," she said, laughing wildly at her joke. We both woke up, went to the restroom, drank some water, and then fell asleep fully clothed on the covers in the master bedroom. Around 8 a.m., I awoke to the fragrance of bacon and eggs. I stumbled down the stairs into the kitchen. Natalie remarked, "Breakfast for 2, in a singing voice. "I thought I'd have to light a stick of dynamite to wake you up," she told me. "I feel like crap," I replied, cringing as I saw myself in the mirror. This is definitely the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. Then I glanced at Natalie. She plainly had a shower, changed clothing, and applied little makeup. She looked like $1 billion. No one should look that good ever, especially after being hammered the day before, I quipped. "I hang out with you because of your charm, not your looks," she complained in response to my critique of how I appeared in the mirror while flipping an egg. "Now sit down on a chair and try to hide your face behind the box of cereal so I can have breakfast in peace." I didn't know I was hungry until I began eating. The dinner was wonderful, and I inhaled nearly as much as I ate. "I'm glad to see that a man appreciates my cooking," Natalie said as I completed the 3rd egg, 200 grams of bacon, and the 4th slice of bread. "Are you going to finish the bagel?" I inquired, pointing my empty fork to the buttered bagel quarter on Natalie's plate. She smiled and placed it on my plate. It slipped down my throat in a couple of seconds. Natalie cradled my head between her hands and looked me in the eyes when she had finished washing the dishes and loading the dishwasher. "I am busy today and have an overnight stay, but I will be here tomorrow afternoon. Let me know if there is anything I can do. But before you do anything rash, you should chat to Emily in person. Do you hear?" "Okay," I mumbled, nodding my head numerous times to underscore my point. Natalie kissed me tenderly on the lips for the first time in my life. "You're disgusting," she laughed. "Shave, shower, and brush your teeth before you do anything else." I chuckled and nodded as she departed. By the end of the day on Tuesday, I had totally sobered up, cleaned the flat, photographed all of the evidence, and scanned it into the computer, storing it on a flash drive. Except for my software helper and production foreman, I did not speak with anybody else. My phone was full with messages, largely from Emily, but also from her parents and mine. I didn't want to speak with her, and I felt it was good that my inbox was filled and my telephone was unplugged. I had pretty well determined what to do, but was still working out the specifics when Emily rushed into the flat on Thursday morning, 12 hours before she was supposed to arrive. I noticed her and turned away. "Liam, I was so worried," she continued, real worry in her voice. "You weren't answering your calls, and I was sure something had happened." "What the devil is wrong, my lovely devoted wife?" I laughed as sarcastically as I could. She went white and put her palm to her lips. Her gaze landed on the paper she had left on the coffee table, still there, but now neatly stacked. She started trembling. "Let me show you my little pile of treats," I added sarcastically, echoing my earlier assertion. I grabbed her hand and walked her to the evidence ID placed out on the kitchen table. "Perhaps you could clarify this?" I barked. After many heavy, racking gasps, she started to talk. "I love you, Liam." It did not signify anything. I became really competitive and wanted to be the top salesperson. "I recently made a couple business transactions. I will quit, I promise. We need to get through this. You are the only one for me. They'll get pregnant, and we can start a family, and so on." I finally snapped. I went into the master bedroom, grabbed all of her things from the closet and dresser drawers, regardless of how I had left them, and flung them all into the guest room. Some items fell into the bed, but the majority landed on the floor. Emily stood in the corridor, crying, before falling to her knees. When I was finished, I walked into the kitchen, retrieved the lock ID purchased at the hardware shop the day before, and placed it on the master bedroom door. She continued to sob, saying, "No, no, no." I departed after locking the bedroom and my office, which already had a solid lock. First, I went to my production facility, then to lunch, and finally to the movie. I returned to the flat approximately 11 p.m. Emily was seated on the couch in the living room. She looked like hell. Her mother and sister were present. "Why are you here, Margaret?" I questioned, annoyed, glancing at my mother-in-law. She struck me as a typical condescending affluent lady. I always tried to be cordial with her in order to keep our relationship at least somewhat civil. "No more, Liam," she responded, obviously delighted with my demeanor. "Emily's sister, Heather, and I would want to give you whatever assistance we can. Help you overcome Emily's error." "Is there a mistake?" I laughed. "Is that what you name it? Did you show your mother the photographs, honey?" I questioned Emily cynically. She dropped her eyes and refused to establish eye contact. "Do you know what you can do, Margaret? Make Emily those 3, 4, 10, or whatever males she spent the night with, and then we can discuss." I entered my bedroom and shut the door. Surprisingly, I slept well that night. Emily had left by the time I woke up the following morning. There was a simple message: "I've decided to go visit Mom and Dad till you calm down, so we can chat more. Do not throw away our future, Liam. We can make it through this. Love, Emily." Emily received divorce papers on Tuesday morning at her parents' residence. There were 2 sets. The first proposed divorce by mutual agreement, with property divided 50-50, claiming irreconcilable differences. The second petitioned for divorce on the grounds of adultery, backed by copies of 5 pieces of proof that proved beyond question. My basic point is that I have not yet submitted any of these applications. Take your selection. I need to hear from you by 9 p.m. tomorrow. If I don't hear from you by then, they'll submit application number 2. Have a lovely life. A knock came on my flat door about 6 p.m. on Tuesday. It was Natalie. "Let's go eat pizza. They'll treat you," she added with a big grin. "I don't." I started, to which she was obviously prepared, as she instantly purred, "You don't have a single reason not to go. Let's go." "Okay," I responded. "I need my wallet." As I began to go back to the apartment, she stopped me. "No, you do not need it. I am treating you. You simply need the keys." She smiled, grabbed my hand, and walked me out of the apartment, picking up the keys from the table near the entrance and presenting them to me. We ate at our favorite pizza, which uses 100% organic products. Natalie attempted to be as happy as possible, which helped a bit, but I remained morose compared to my typical mood. When I was full, and we were in a quiet corner of the restaurant, she held my hand and said, "Have you decided what you're going to do?" "Yes," I answered. I mailed her 2 sets of divorce papers today. One was conciliatory, the other angry, and informed her that it was her decision. They'll serve one of them tomorrow morning. No possibility for reconciliation? She asked. I considered this carefully. I simply cannot forgive or forget. Loyalty is really essential to me, and she clearly does not care. I'm not even going to speak to her anymore. Natalie kept looking between my hand and my eyes. Eventually, she spoke. When your divorce is final, I want to get you first. What? I inquired, certain that I hadn't heard her remarks. You are my best buddy. Plus, I'm in love with you. As soon as we go on our first date, they'll leave my present work. I'm confident enough to find another work, regardless of how much it pays. I have enough funds to survive until I get you, and I will, if you give me the opportunity. I was astonished. I had no notion Natalie was in love with me. She saw my stillness as constraint rather than horror. I'm surprised she didn't realize that not only would I give her a chance, but I'd fall madly in love with the goddess who was already my best friend. The mere prospect of closeness with this strange creature made my whole body shiver, not just my manhood and my pants. I know you probably won't want to have an ex-call girl as your girlfriend, but I promise you won't regret it if shut up, I demanded. Then I stepped up and kissed Natalie firmly on the lips. After a few seconds, she comprehended the program and rose from her seat, kissing me passionately across the table. I sat back down once we separated our lips. If you're insane enough to be in love with me, let me tell you about my plan. We maintain our connection as is until 3 weeks before my divorce is complete. At this moment, you decide to leave your employment. I sell my apartment, and you breach your lease. The day the divorce is finalized, we travel to a resort for a week, and if you still want a relationship, we relocate to another part of the nation, rent an apartment together, and if you're still insane enough to love me, we marry. Natalie raised her hands to her lips and started crying. We strolled back to our apartments together, holding hands. I had never felt more alive, and Natalie was overjoyed. That night, I knew I wanted the strategy we devised after the pizza to succeed more than anything else in my life. However, I expected issues. The first one arrived. Emily's father, Jonathan Waverly, phoned at 7:50 a.m. When I heard his voice, I stiffened. Hello, Liam. This is Jonathan Waverly. I was hoping to give Emily an hour off your 9 a.m. deadline so that we may meet. The meeting won't change anything, Christopher. Liam, you've got nothing to lose. If you still want a divorce after an hour-long consultation with me, I promise Emily will pick irreconcilable differences, and everything will proceed rapidly. Please, you owe me this. I didn't owe him anything, but considering how I wanted my relationship with Natalie to go, the timing was appropriate. Okay, when can we meet? I can be with you in half an hour. See you later, I replied and hung up. The meeting with Christopher had no purpose other than to establish that he had no notion what I was like. Essentially, he was attempting to persuade me of the economic benefits of remaining married to Emily. He predicted my future wealth and did all in his power to keep me wedded. He even gave me $2 million in cash and promised Emily would sign a postnuptial agreement, which guaranteed me another $2 million if she ever strayed again. Sorry, Christopher, I said. You done all you could for your young child, but there will be no deal. I still don't understand why she wants to remain married. I'd imagine she'd be pleased if I didn't get in her way. Cheating wasn't her style, Liam, he told me. She just lost focus on what was important. Sorry, but I won't do it. Don't forget to urge her to send the signed paperwork to my lawyer this morning. Christopher seemed unhappy as he went. Maybe not because he was leaving me, but because his little child had to face reality. Finally, the day arrived. The divorce was finalized. Natalie and I left our residences after 10 days. I sold my flat and everything in it, save for the computer equipment Emily didn't need. Natalie's 30-day lease was ended, and she also sold her stuff. I had nearly finished selling my business hardware to my staff. Emily did not attend in court. Only her lawyer appeared for the last hearing. I just came there because I needed a copy of the resolution right away. My baggage for the trip to the resort had already been packed when I knocked on the door of apartment 10B after the trial. I anticipated Natalie to be prepared to depart. She was actually prepared, but not for the trip. She was completely nude except for her high shoes and ankle bracelet. We have time to spend together before we go to the resort. Besides, I don't believe you can manage a 2-hour trip, she laughed, pointing to my obvious enthusiasm. Natalie grabbed my tie and brought me inside her flat. Her client had already claimed her bed, so the sofa cushions were on the living room floor. Finally, I regained consciousness, slid totally onto my side, and felt a lovely impulse in my spine as my manhood exited what had become his favorite spot in the world and stared up into her face. She grinned broadly. "Those were the first two real climaxes I've had since I can remember," she said, still beaming. "Do you understand why? Because I am such a nice man?" I laughed in answer. "You would," she laughed, before becoming serious. "I had great climaxes because we made love. We didn't just have intimacy. I really love you, Liam. And I love you very much too, Natalie," I said. "Even before you just rocked my world with intimacy that was so much better than anything I'd ever experienced before that it felt like something else entirely." She kissed me passionately. After a little respite, we played the second round. After reciprocal caresses, we made love again, since that is what it was all about. Finally, we dressed, placed our luggage into the vehicle, and drove away. Natalie cuddled close to me for almost an hour as we drove to the resort. Then she backed away and said, "Liam, I have 4 things to tell you. I need to do this immediately before we proceed." "Ready?" "Ready," I said, smiling. "First of all, my name is not Natalie Reed. My name is Rebecca Carlson, or Becca for short. I have a complete set of phony IDs that were good enough to sign an apartment lease and purchase a vehicle with. If things work out between us, I plan to entirely abandon my previous name and break all ties with my 4 years as an escort." "Wow, you could work for the CIA," I said with a whistle. "You're really adept at concealing your identity. Should I call you Becca now?" "Don't call me Becca until you're ready to put a ring on it," she said with laughter. "Okay, Natalie, what's the next revelation?" "I stopped working as an escort the day I told you I loved you, and I accelerated through a community college program so that I'm all the way through my freshman year and have 3 credits for my sophomore year." "That is fantastic," I said truly, and not for just one reason. "You are full of surprises." "Not finished yet," she smiled. "Third, I came up with a fresh idea for an internet company that I'd want to start. They'll present this proposal to you after our visit to the resort, and if you like it, we can split the costs." "I can't wait to hear about it," I said, smiling. "Finally, fourthly, and this is the only thing that makes me tense," she moaned, blushing slightly. "If you have any concerns concerning my profession as an escort, please ask them this week, and I will respond honestly. After this week, I don't want to think about it again, and any mention of it will make me upset. So if you have any questions, ask them this week." It was clear that the issue made her anxious. I had nothing else to worry about since I had long ago resolved that I didn't care about her previous profession, though I'd be lying if I didn't say that I was relieved she quit working as an escort more than 2 months ago. I wanted to ask her, but I couldn't just leave her hanging, so I came up with what I felt was a witty response. After an acceptable interval, I said, "I really only have one question, and I'll leave it at that." She stared at me hopefully. "You mentioned you charge $700 per hour, correct?" "Yes," she said nervously. "Now that I've made love to you, I wonder why you took so little. You should have charged 100 times more." She grinned broadly, kissed my cheek, and placed her head on my shoulder. "That was the last time we discussed this. Our time at the resort was fantastic. I'm confident no one had a finer honeymoon, even if we didn't really have one. I had a lot of fun snorkeling, swimming, jet skiing, hiking, playing beach volleyball, archery, drinking with my closest buddy, and then dancing, holding, and kissing a goddess. That doesn't even include the evenings, which were genuinely surreal. After 7 days, the only difficulty I had was that my man's tool and tongue were uncomfortable enough to pain. But it was a really joyful and satisfied agony because I was happier than I had ever been. After the first day at the resort, when we fell asleep in one another's arms after a spectacular lovemaking session, I planned to propose to her on the 5th day. She said yes. I would have married the day we left the resort, but Natalie, Becca, had never married, and she had just a few relatives she cared about and wanted to be around, so we waited 3 months and had a modest, but completely appropriate, wedding ceremony and celebration in our new city. Becca completed an associate's degree in business administration in 9 months after relocating to a new city. We collaborated in my software firm, and 3 months later, we launched her new business utilizing a patented approach she developed to optimize online marketing using hybrid recognition of search phrases. However, for years after its introduction, we have chosen to sell her firm for a 7-figure price since she has to concentrate on something else. Becca, my dearest friend, personal muse, goddess, and love of my life, is expecting twins. Thanks for watching. What are your thoughts on the characters' choices? Would you have forgiven and gone on, or started over as they did? Please share your ideas in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for future tales.